The first time I saw the 3 a.m. bus, I was walking home from a tavern with my roommate. It was raining, and we were drunk, stumbling along in our boots, and not caring if we got soaked. I usually wouldn't have noticed a random bus driving down the street, especially in the state I was in, but I had just finished complaining about how we had to walk in the rain, and why wasn't there a late-night bus route that could take us home quickly? We were both far too cheap to pay for a cab or an Uber. Plus, we had spent all of our money on alcohol. Why is that guy waiting at the bus stop? Didn't you say that, all the buses were done for the night? You're gonna die from those hiccups, just like that guy in the Guinness Book of Records. That ain't going away. Nice knowing you, bud. Seriously, why is he just standing there? We should tell him. I started stumbling over in that direction, and Tom pulled me back suddenly out of the street. Just as I was about to cross, a bus appeared out of nowhere. What the hell? Where did that come from? I asked. If he hadn't grabbed me, the bus would have easily killed me. It looked like an ordinary city bus, except the ads on the side of it didn't make any sense. Drink Gluberton foam, it read. There was a super realistic computer-generated, I presumed, creature displayed on the side of the bus. It had a foamy green milk moustache, and held aloft a bottle of the aforementioned Gluberton foam. The creature was purple and covered in spines like a sea urchin. It had one large eye instead of two that dangled from an eye socket in the center of its face. Tom didn't see the ad, he said later on. He was too distracted by the fact that I had almost killed myself. What the hell were you thinking, man? He asked me after the bus drove away. Shut up about the damn bus, you could have died. We left there, and I looked back to see the man who had been waiting at the bus stop was now gone. An overwhelming curiosity began to grow inside of me. I wanted to know where the strange bus had come from and where it had gone. It had seemed to appear and then vanished without a trace. I marked the details of what had happened down in a new journal I had gotten for my birthday. This would end up becoming the journal that I would use to track my progress in locating the 3 a.m. bus. It wasn't easy. It took years, actually. For every 100 times I went out looking for the damn thing, I saw it maybe once or twice. The bus was elusive, but it gave a clue if you looked closely. Something that I should have realized immediately, but it took me a while longer than it should have. I wasn't supposed to look for the bus. I was supposed to look for the riders. The strange folks who actually traveled on this bus, operating outside the hours of normalcy. So I drove the streets looking for them, and when I saw them, very rarely, I watched them. I observed them from a distance at first, too afraid to approach, but eventually I built up my courage. It was the 4th time I'd seen one particular rider. I referred to him in my journals as the trenchcoat man, because he wore a charcoal trench coat and wide-brimmed hat. His face was always shrouded in shadows, and he was constantly smoking a cigarette. In his other hand was a briefcase. These things never changed about him. When I saw him that time, I finally did it. I overcame my fears and got out of my car and approached him in the rain. Oh, that was the other thing I noticed. It was always raining when I saw this particular character, but he was by far the most frequently seen. My feet splashed through the cold puddles, soaking my feet, but I didn't care. I was finally on the right side of the road, with the trenchcoat man just a few yards away. I was panting, out of breath, when I finally got to him. The bus came a second later, and the doors opened up before us. "Cutting it pretty close, aren't you?" he asked me, his face still cloaked in shadow. "Yeah, sorry about that," I said. In my mind, I had never seen myself getting this far. The 3 a.m. bus had always been an elusive ghost, and now I was about to step onto it. Did I want to? I realized I hadn't thought this through. An overwhelming curiosity propelled me forward, and I realized I would die if I had to. But I needed to see this through. I needed to find out what this strange bus was, and where it came from. The man sighed resignedly and walked up the small staircase onto the bus. I followed after him. As soon as the bus doors closed behind me, I realized I had made a terrible mistake. But by then, it was too late. All the windows were blacked out, and I suddenly felt like a prisoner being marched into a cell. What had I been thinking getting on this strange bus? Nothing was right about any of the passengers. I realized my heart beating fast in my throat. I shook uncontrollably with fear, but somehow realized I had no choice but to keep moving forward. There was no getting off now. The driver motioned me past him, grunting impatiently as he began to drive, pointing his black-nailed thumb back towards the rear of the bus. The driver had a large, bulbous purple head and a lumpy body covered in zit-like pustules. He was clothed in a black bus driver's uniform and hat. As he opened his mouth to yell at me, and I saw rows and rows of sharp teeth inside and a long, pointed black tongue. "Come, you're going to upset him," the man in the trench coat said, motioning me to sit down next to him at the rear of the bus. I began to walk down the aisle of the bus on shaky legs, trying not to stare rudely at all manner of alien and bizarre creatures which sat on either side of me on the cramped bus. Near the front, a squid man sat, holding a small, pale creature with wide black eyes in its lap like a pet. There was a tall thing to the right which looked elastic and wrong, its features deep set into folds that seemed to render it senseless and blank. Yet it observed me with interest as I passed by, seeming keenly aware that I did not belong. A huge beast, which looked to have been sewn together from many different creatures and people, sat taking up 2 seats, holding a giant cleaver in its massive hands. It smelled like the butcher shop and like blood and meat. There were lizard men and frog people, things that like ants, and men with bulls' heads and bare chests. A talking cat was having a lively conversation with another bored-looking half-bird humanoid passenger who sat next to it. An amorphous blob sat behind the trenchcoat man at the very back of the bus, taking up the whole bench there. I sat down and my guide lit a fresh cigarette, exhaling faintly purple smoke. He had a clipboard in his shadowy hands and seemed to be examining me with interest. "I have to say, I'm kind of surprised you showed up. The last 3 didn't." Obviously, I had no idea what he was talking about, but I played along, or at least tried to. I was hoping I could still get some answers, even if I was terrified and wanted to eventually get home at the end of all this. "Well, I guess I'm not like the other 3, I said vaguely. "You certainly aren't. They were much skinnier. You seem like you could actually be of some use to us. Are there more like you on GXR 187? GXR 187? Sorry, what you refer to as Earth? Oh, sure. I mean, we all like to think we're one of a kind and all that, but I'm sure there's a couple million people who are just like me." That seemed to pique his interest. "Really? Well, we're always looking for new recruits. I suppose maybe our methods need to be adjusted. The Craigslist ads have been yielding dwindling results." I thought to myself. So this is a job interview. They had been trying to recruit people from Earth to join some sort of project. How exciting! I wondered if this could be a breakthrough for all of mankind, making contact with intelligent life from other dimensions. Craigslist? Yeah, nobody uses that anymore. I can show you some better websites. Indeed is pretty good, and I guess monster.com, but that would be a little bit on the nose. I don't understand. Never mind. The bus came to a stop suddenly, and the passengers started getting off. "Well, here we are. Would you like a quick tour before getting down to business?" "Sure," I said, excited to see what this operation entailed. We got off the bus, amidst the crush of alien creatures all around us, slimy bodies and hairy ones pressed against mine, as I tried not to lose the trenchcoat man amidst the crowd. I followed after him closely until we were out of the bus terminal. I looked up in awe and wonder at the sky above once we were out in the open air. Part of me wondered what I was breathing, and if it was close enough to air that I wouldn't die, because we clearly were not in Kansas anymore. Not that I live in Kansas, but you get the picture. Whirling galaxies and multiple suns shined down on us from above, the sky a pale greenish-blue shade. The clouds were pink, like cotton candy, and creatures like dinosaurs flew through the sky above, as well as futuristic-looking spacecraft. Large ships, like intergalactic freighters, took off from the roof of a massive building that the crowd was lined up walking towards. I had never seen a structure so enormous. It disappeared into the distance from both sides that were visible, no end in sight. The haze obscured the far ends of it, which appeared to be many kilometers in the distance. The undertaking involved in creating such an enormous factory was mind-boggling. I surmised quickly that it was a manufacturing facility for Gluberton foam, the product I had seen advertised on the side of the 3 a.m. bus, since large banners and displays were everywhere for the stuff. When we got closer to the building, I saw clearly a large sign with huge letters proclaiming this to be the headquarters and central manufacturing facility for the company. I tried not to think too hard about the fact I could read all the signs, and they weren't written in some alien language. The possibility that this was all a sleep-deprived hallucination occurred to me briefly, but then I shrugged that off. This was all way too real. Trenchcoat Man led me onto a moving platform that brought us in through a visitor's entrance. The platform lifted up off the ground and began to levitate, bringing us around to various stations and showing us Gluberton foam being made step by step. Here's where volunteers such as yourself are brought into the facility for processing. We use a state-of-the-art stunning procedure that is virtually painless. I saw through a window the other passengers from the bus being led in through a doorway like cattle into a meat plant. An electric shock hit them like lightning from both sides of their heads, and they fell down to the floor unconscious. The talking cat seemed to have gotten away somehow, but the other passengers I saw fall one by one to the floor, unmoving. Moving on, we'll proceed to the platform lifted off again and began to move to the next station. I was suddenly even more terrified than before, stunned senseless and unable to hear the words coming from my guide. This wasn't a job interview. I had signed up to be slaughtered. So, you're saying you don't want to be killed and processed into an easily digestible foam? If it was possible for a man without a face to give an incredulous look, the shadowy trenchcoat man was giving me one. He stood there waiting for a response from me while we moved from station to station on a levitating platform, which took us touring around the Gluberton Foam Central Manufacturing Facility. The place was massive inside, bigger than any city back on Earth. I decided it was time to be upfront and honest, since bluffing and lying had almost gotten me killed on this accidental interdimensional adventure. No, I don't. Please don't kill me and eat me. I just got on that bus because it looked really weird, and buses aren't supposed to come at that time of night, and I was just curious, and oh, shit! I'm gonna die here, aren't I? The words were pouring out of me faster than I could think. All I knew was that if this guy wasn't going to help me, I was going to be turned into foodstuffs, becoming part of the indiscriminate green ooze that was sold across the multiverse as Gluberton foam. Okay, calm down. If you don't want to be part of the Alliance, then just say so, the trenchcoat man said, sounding judgmental. Whoa, so I don't have to be turned into foam? I can just go back home. Of course. We're not savages. Well, that's a relief. What did you say about an alliance? I asked, curious again now that I knew I wasn't going to be killed. Well, I don't usually explain these things to outsiders, but it doesn't really matter now anyways. The platform took off again and moved to a station with a window overlooking the production floor. Shiny, high-tech machinery could be seen filling up every conceivable shape and size of vessel with green foam. There were things like toothpaste tubes, tubs the size of mayonnaise jars, barrels and basins and buckets ranging all the way to huge vats the size of water towers. From this central processing location, we feed the entire GXR sector of the multiverse. All participating member planets receive enough supply for their dominant species to survive and thrive. Once the carrying capacity of a member planet is reached, we begin to cull the excess for production. It's a win-win for all involved, assuming your species is compatible with the foamification process. It took me a minute to understand what he was saying. So, what you're telling me is, every planet eats nothing but Gluberton foam. They don't have to worry about food anymore. Or liquid, water, in your planet's case. The foam is also hydrating and can be formulated to any specifications for maximum usefulness. Every mineral, vitamin, amino acid and supplement needed to prevent disease and extend life is researched and supplied. The benefits of Alliance membership are far-reaching beyond that, of course. Food supply is just the very beginning. Wow, so you supply all that, and in return, we give you people that you can kill and turn into more Gluberton foam? Essentially, yes. By offering yourself for processing, you would have made the first step towards joining the Alliance. a sacrifice to show your planet's willingness to give and receive in order to be a part of this great fellowship. But now, sadly, well, 4 strikes and you're out, as we say, so that was the last chance for Earth. Wait, so people were volunteering to get eaten? Yes, like I said, Craigslist. But mostly they just said they wanted to be eaten, and then they never showed up. Highly irregular and quite rude, if you ask me. The platform lifted off again and moved onto another station where we could watch Gluberton foam being put onto pallets and being stacked and moved by hovering forklifts. Okay, well, I can safely say that Earth is not interested in this proposition. We don't eat each other where I come from. He made a slightly annoyed sound. Ah, so you've got it all figured out. Good for you. Not like I've seen worlds like yours before. You're all going to be dead inside of. You know what? Forget it. I'm not going to waste my time. I could tell he was getting annoyed with me. Better try to mend fences, I thought to myself, or you're going to really piss him off and wind up stuck here. He's your only way back, after all. I had no idea how to navigate my way out of the enormous factory. Look, I'm sorry. That probably sounded judgmental. We're just not ready for this as a species, I don't think. But hey, give us another 50 years and we'll be begging to be turned into foam. He turned around and uncrossed his arms. Really? You mean that? Yeah, probably. I was doing math in my head, trying to figure out how old I would be in 50 years. 85, so probably dead. Definitely, 50 years or maybe a little more like 60, but we'll get there. What do you say? Will you help me get home? I would really, really appreciate it. It smells like blood in here, like so much blood. It was true. The coppery smell was intensifying as we got further into the factory. We were now at a window looking out onto the killing floor. Okay, this is the last stop, then I'll show you back to the bus. But we can't make this thing move any faster, so we're stuck here for a minute. Might as well watch the show. Oh, look, they're butchering a Farfig Newtonian. This is going to be interesting. I tasted acid and bile rising into my throat unpleasantly as I watched, too horrified and stunned to turn away. They were slicing the giant green alien's pale belly open with a sharp knife. One of the workers held the wound edge open so another could climb inside and start to pull out the entrails of the massive beast. It was the size of an elephant compared to them. Oh, no. Clearly another batch who didn't pay attention in safety training, the man in the trench coat said, shifting nervously. The worker who had climbed inside of the giant alien's belly was suddenly screaming, and the others ran to assist him. Tentacles were wrapping him up and sucking him deeper into the belly of the giant dead creature, swallowing him like quicksand as he flailed and screamed. Hang on a second. I'll be right back, the trenchcoat man said. He pushed a button, and the glass panel turned to liquid, and he stepped right through it, surprising me by leaving me alone on the floating platform. He walked over to the crew and began shouting at them, telling them to stop what they were doing. Blood began to spray out from the center of the huge beast, and teeth could be seen devouring the worker who had been ensnared. I was watching nervously, waiting for him to come back, when suddenly the platform began to move again. It was on a timer, it seemed, and was programmed to move onto the next station on the factory tour. Hey! Hey, trenchcoat guy! I yelled, but it was too late. I was left alone on the platform as it moved on to the final stop of the tour. It had taken us full circle, back to the lineup which led to the killing floor. I tried to sidestep around the crush of aliens creatures who surrounded me on all sides, but found myself swept away towards the killing floor. Soon I was stuck in the quick-moving line which led to the stun gun apparatus I had seen earlier. Screaming, I tried desperately to get out of the line I had been forced into, but my cries for help were muffled by the huge furry forms of 2 tall, Bigfoot-like creatures who stood on either side of me. They were waiting placidly for their time to come, seeming unbothered by their impending death. Help! I'm not supposed to be here. I was supposed to go back home, I shouted at them. Too bad for you. I tried to tell them the same thing, said the one just in front of me. Then he was knocked senseless by a bolt of electricity on either side of his neck. I ducked just in time, looking up to see the electric shock device was automatically adjusted to each individual's height. I had barely managed to avoid it, and half expected alarm bells to start ringing and for alien workers to come running. But nothing happened. The conveyor belt I stood on kept moving forward, and I watched horrified as each alien creature in front of me was sliced up at lightning-quick speed by an assortment of robot arm-controlled blades which swung down from the ceiling. It was like a meat factory from hell, a manufacturing facility made for suffering. Seeing all of the gleaming robots working so rapidly at their tasks of disemboweling and disassembling the bloody bodies. As I approached this section, I became more and more afraid, as the conveyor belt I was stuck on was now hovering over an expanse of nothingness below. A sheer drop on both sides of more than 100 yards was below where steel mesh grates caught the bloody viscera and guts being flung from the blades above. The huge Sasquatch creature lying prone in front of me was suddenly picked up by huge steel grabber hands, and he was horrifically skinned and flayed, his arms and legs separated from his torso. Quickly, the blades began to slice and took the meat from the bone with ease. Just as the blades were coming at me, something caught my eye. There was a cat sitting atop a piece of machinery near the conveyor belt. He had his legs crossed and looked comfortable and unconcerned with the dire situation I was in, screaming and terrified. Then he surprised me by speaking, and I realized it was the same talking cat I had seen on the bus which brought us here. "If you want to live, you'd better jump down that chute. Those blades are coming for you, and they won't miss you like that stun gun machine did." Without thinking about it too much, or questioning it, I jumped feet first straight down a manhole-sized opening filled with blood and guts. I went sliding down into darkness, going faster and faster, until I finally landed in a disgusting slurry of blood and internal organs. It was all of the off-cast waste product from the incoming livestock. It smelled putrid, coppery, and disgusting. It was thick, slimy, and coated me head to toe as I screamed for help from the cesspool of viscera. No one answered my calls for help, and I felt myself drowning, gulping mouthfuls of blood instead of air as I tried to stay afloat. Then a blaring siren pierced my ears and began to echo throughout the space. I heard the sound of a drain opening up beneath me and gasped for a breath of air before being sucked down into the whirlpool which took me under. I could see nothing and only felt fear for my life as I held my breath and torpedoed through the drain pipe filled with blood and innards. They went up my nose and into my mouth. All I could think of was my family and friends and how I would never see them again. I was going to drown in a sewer of blood. But then suddenly, I saw light. The greenish-blue sky above with its swirling galaxies and multiple suns greeted me as I was spit out a drain pipe and into a murky lake made of blood. Swimming, and then clawing my way out and up the shoreline, I raced up the steep slope towards the factory entrance, hoping the bus was still there. The 3 a.m. bus that had taken me to this horrible place. That was when I saw the trenchcoat man wandering around smoking a cigarette and pacing outside the gates. The bus was in the distance a little ways behind him. Running over to him, I felt a smile spread across my face. He'd agreed to get me home. I was finally going to get out of this mess. "Woo, I'm so glad I found you," I said, coughing up blood when I was close enough to talk to him. "Hello. Can I go home now, please?" He blew out a cloud ring of pink smoke and chuckled. The sound was like broken glass and nails on a chalkboard. I suddenly realized this was not the same trenchcoat man. This one was taller and seemed more malevolent somehow. I backed away slowly from him. "What? Don't you want to be part of the product? We can make a whole vat out of you, Chunky." He was coming at me, and I realized not every employee from this company was as friendly as the talent scout I had met. I ducked under his shadowy grasp and ran past him as quickly as I could towards the 3 a.m. bus. The doors were closing just as I arrived, and I stuck my hand in the gap to stop it. The pinch was painful, but not as painful as being turned into foam, so I didn't mind. I heaved the doors open with all my strength and ran up the stairs and past the purple pustule-covered driver. "Earth, please," I asked the driver politely. "Oh no." I struggled to recall the alphanumeric code for Earth that the trenchcoat man had said. "GXR 187?" I said, unsure. He seemed to understand that and motioned me to the back of the bus. I was the only one on board, I realized. There didn't seem to be an issue with my request, since we began moving immediately. Within minutes, we were back at the bus stop where I had gotten on. It was the same rainy night, and nothing had changed. My car was still sitting a little ways back, and was parked at the side of the road where I had left it. I got up and went towards the front of the bus to exit. The driver opened the door and looked at me darkly as I walked past. Proceeding down the steps, I heard his voice behind me, and as I stepped out into the rain, the words hit me. I would remember them for the rest of my life. You doomed your planet to oblivion, son. Good job. Hope saving your skin was worth it. The doors swung shut behind me, and the bus drove off into the rainy night, into the darkness. Water from the sky washed away the sticky blood and guts which covered me and made a cloudy pool of crimson rainwater beneath my feet. The bus was gone, vanished as if it had never existed. I looked for it after that many times. It never came back. He never came back. Now when I watch the news and see stories of famine and plagues, global warming and water shortages, I can't help but think, can't help but wonder. I might have made a terrible mistake.
That's the end of this story. If you found it engaging, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this.